one last fight.
Secret Invasion is one of the biggest events in the comics, and we finally see a live-action version of the show airing on Disney+. And it's finally finished, and I thought I would review the show episode by episode and then give my general thoughts on the show. Spoilers ahead. Episode 1 is arguably the best episode in the show. We see right off the bat that Everett Ross is a Skrull, and then they kill Maria Hill at the end of the episode, and it's very intense. It's very much that spy espionage thriller that we love to see from Marvel, but sadly it only goes downhill from there. Now this episode I would say would get an 8.5 out of 10, seeing as it's the best of the entire show. Now, episode 2, even though it isn't as great as episode 1, it's still up there as one of the better episodes of the show. We don't get very much insane reveals. We see that Nick Fury's wife was a Skrull, which was a shock, but it was also kind of predictable. We also see that they're making Super Skrulls, even though it isn't obviously name dropped as such at this point. And we also see more about Gravik's mission and his hate toward the humans and Nick Fury especially, and why he's doing this all. We also find out that world leaders are Skrulls as well, similar to how it is in the comics. So this one I would say gets a 7 out of 10. Like, there's nothing that special in it. It's just an average episode. It does increase the tension of the show. Now, episode 3, right off the bat, reveals that the Skrulls are trying to make Super Skrulls, and we also find out that Gravik has injected himself with the serum. Now, the big main highlight of this episode is that Gravik and Talos have that face-off arc that we saw a lot of footage of in the trailer, and the one thing this show does really well is these face-off between two characters. For example, when Rhodey, or Scrody, and Nick Fury talk and Nick Fury gets fired, it's very much an intense sort of battle of ideologies. Similarly, we see the same thing with Gravik and Talos. They both have the same end goal, but the way they want to achieve it is different. Talos has sort of this more peaceful way of trying to deal with things. Gravik is much more just kill everyone and take the planet for ourselves sort of thing. And we also see when Nick Fury and Talos face off against each other, even though they're not facing off, but the comedy is very much there, and it's good to see not forced cringe humor that we often see in the MCU, especially in Phase 4 and 5.
Eat my hammer!
So this episode gets a 6.5 out of 10, even though we do see Gaia die, but we do know that she has the Super Skrull serum at this point, so it's not that big of a reveal. Now, episode 4 reveals that Gaia has the extremis in her. That's how she is able to survive the bullet. This show does not hesitate to kill off major characters, unlike some of the movies that we've seen, where the major character still lives on and the film is very hesitant to kill them off, even though they tease it. This is very much, they're very ready to kill off the main character, but it would seem pretty stupid to kill off 3 of the big main characters. So Gaia being there is cool.
Very cool.
We see the US convoy being attacked by Skrulls with the assistance of the Russians, and then we see the death of Talos. Now, Talos is honestly one of the greatest characters. He's one of the plus point of the show, and it is sad to see him die, but it is important for Gaia's character development. We find out that Rhodey's a Skrull, finally, at last. I theorized this in my video on my channel. We also find out about the backstory of why Nick Fury's wife chose that face, and it's a very emotional story. And then she doesn't actually kill Nick Fury either, even though she was tossed to by Rhodey, or Scrody. Therefore, it shows their love is strong. This episode was amazing. This one gets an 8 out of 10. Episode 5 is nothing special. It's just that classic episode of build up everything for the finale. And so we see that Gaia goes to see Nick Fury's wife to hold a funeral for Talos, and we see Nick Fury go meet Sonya to deal with the whole crisis, and he talks about the harvest and how Rhodey's a Skrull, and essentially the harvest is where all the Avengers' DNA is taken after the Battle of Earth. This completely changes how we understand the ending of Endgame, and the whole reason Fury was there wasn't just to pay respects to Tony Stark, but he was also there to collect DNA. And so this episode gets a 6.5 out of 10. It's not the worst episode, but it does build up really well to the finale. Now, the finale itself, it is pretty disappointing, but at this point we're used to that in Marvel shows, because the 6-episode format is not enough for there to be enough content for us to feel fulfilled. But anyways, in this we see Nick Fury, or Gaia pretending to be Nick Fury, going to meet Gravik, who then activates the Super Skrull machine thingy with DNA collected in the harvest, and basically both Gaia and Gravik have pretty much every Avengers DNA in them, and then they fight and Gaia goes binary and and kills Gravik. This means that Gaia is the strongest Avenger currently on planet Earth.
What?
And it does raise the interesting question of, does she have the light-based powers that we see get entangled in the Marvels trailer? And so if that's the case, then is she going to be in the Marvels? Or because she's just copying the DNA, it doesn't actually count. We also see Nick Fury and Sonya go to protect the president, and then Scrody gets shot, and we see that the president finds out about the Skrulls, and he decides to wage all-out war against the Skrulls, which is a pretty dumb idea because they are shape-shifting aliens, and it would mean it would truly be a secret invasion after this. But the Skrulls are sort of good now, I guess, but there might be a faction of the Skrulls that are still with Gravik even though he's dead. But it would be interesting to see if this would develop into a season 2 or even a movie where we can actually get proper secret invasion like the comics, where we see Avengers and superheroes being mimicked and we don't know who's who. We also see Nick Fury return to Saber, but that was given, seeing as the Marvels trailer released months in advance. So we then also see Gaia go to free everyone that was captured by the Skrulls, who then they impersonated, and we see Rhodey in hospital robes being unable to walk, which implies that it might be during Civil War or some sort of surgery post Endgame. But this does raise interesting questions of, like, does this Rhodey now that Tony died and the Rhodey that we see at Tony Stark's funeral actually shed a tear? Does that mean it's a Skrull shedding a tear and pretending to be sad? Overall, this episode gets a 7 out of 10 because it's just, there's nothing special to it. It's very rushed towards the end. As for the show overall, I feel Marvel is very much constricted, and the show writers and the showrunners are very much constricted with this whole 6-episode format. Like, having longer episodes means that they're able to flesh out character journeys and build tension even longer, which is what WandaVision did so well, was that they were able to build this whole mystery behind the Hex for many episodes before they finally revealed it. The finale didn't feel fully rushed, and perhaps they should adapt the format that we see with Daredevil Born Again with 18 episodes or 9 episodes split into 2 parts with a break in the middle. It means that the audience is able to fully engage with the storyline. Or it simply should have been a movie with a higher budget and more CGI. But in general, this show isn't the worst show out there. Personally, I would rank this sort of in the middle, with like Loki being the very best and She-Hulk being the very worst of the ranking. And so overall, this show gets a 7 out of 10. It's pretty average, but it starts off great and then just ends off average. But it does leave things in an interesting way that I am excited to see some of these Skrull characters in the future, and especially Gaia now that she's overpowered. Thanks for watching my review, and check out this video to see how long Nick Fury was a Skrull for.